The UCC Business Development and Consulting Institute is a multifunctional business development organization and member of the Small Business Development Center Network, providing services to assist MSMEs in achieving their business objectives. Our business consulting services improve all facets of corporate operations. Our back office services, Value Edge and Legal Bloom, are designed to provide an effective suite of accounting and financial management solutions and assist businesses in formalizing their activities while conforming to the legal framework such as tax and labor requirements. Learn more about our services at www.bdci.ca.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another session of the Bottom Line Boots, Cutting Cost and Growing Revenue with Sustainable Practices. Today's speaker would be Anika Barrett. Anika Barrett is a dynamic leader with extensive experience blending business strategy and a corporate responsibility. She specializes in corporate sustainability, environment, social governance, ESG adoption, and incorporation into governance processes. As CEO of Pinnacle Impact International Limited and a certified climate risk professional, she guides organizations in integrating these principles into core business strategies. Ms. Barrett's expertise spans the Caribbean region, including board experience with the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange. She brings value insights from roles in the financial service sectors in Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago, as well as through managing partnerships with private businesses, multilateral agencies, governments, and nonprofit entities. Her firm, Pinnacle Impact, is partnered with Digitopia, a lending provider of transformation management solution, to pioneer the Sustainability Maturity Index (SMI) solution. She offers organizations a data-driven, AI-powered approach to measuring and enhancing sustainability performance, particularly relevant as AI technologies transform traditional governance models. Onika holds a Certified Climate Risk Professional designation from the Chartered Bank Institute, MSc, Development Studies. She has a distinction from the University of West Indies and additional credentials. She also attended the Fordham University in USA, Angela Ruskin University in UK, and the Harvard Business School in the USA. Please welcome Onika Barrett.
Thank you so much, Roshane. I just want to do a quick check and make sure that everyone can hear me. Can everybody hear me clearly?
Yes, we're hearing you.
Awesome. And can everybody see me clearly?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for the warm welcome, Roshane. And it is just such a pleasure to be here and to share on a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. And I'm just looking forward to a great next 50 minutes to an hour with everybody here. And we can just get started. Tell me, please, if it is that you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. So today we're looking at the bottom line boost, and we're looking at cutting costs and growing the revenue of our organization using sustainable business practices. And Roshane would have already introduced me. It's just such a pleasure and an honor to be here with everybody today. And Pinnacle Impact, we are pretty much a social impact and ESG advisory service that's provided across the Caribbean region. And so it's really great to be able to have this particular conversation with you today. Now, I just wanted to share a little story as to why I thought it was important to have this conversation with the startup community and the MSME sector. So late last year, I would have partnered with the Jamaica Stock Exchange and UNDP to do an introductory program to ESG for a lot of participants from the financial services sector, as well as manufacturing and so on. And it was great to see the interest, but I remember there was a young lady in the room who operates more on the small business side. And I remember her saying, wow, this is great, and I understand it, but how do startup organizations and how do much smaller businesses, how do we take this on? Because this just seems like a lot. And I will admit, I don't know if anybody here has been hearing much about the talk around sustainability or climate change or whatever the case may be. And it can be overwhelming. There is a lot of components to it. But today, we will focus on 4 key things. We're just going to do a quick understanding to get some of the fundamentals. We're going to talk a little bit about how do the fundamentals of sustainability link to the MSME sector. And then we're going to look at that from a risk, cost, and revenue opportunity perspective, which I think is really critical for us to translate that conversation to a small business, a micro business, and so forth. And then we're going to talk about what some practical action steps might look like for you. And granted, we are operating here in vastly different ends of the spectrum, because we could be operating with as little as 1 employee, as much as 50-something employees. But whichever part of the spectrum you fall, this conversation is, I believe, is relevant to you. However, I wanted to test and just get a sense from you. How important do you think sustainability will be to your business in the next 3 years? And I would love if you can just drop your answer in the chat. If you think that it's going to be critical, drop number 1. If you think it's going to be important, number 2. Nice to have, but not so essential for you, drop number 3. And if you don't think it will be important to your business at all, drop number 4. I would love to see at least 1 or 2 responses. Thank you so much, Deandra. Number 1, critical to survival. Anybody else? Shanika, same. Anybody else? Give me 1 more response. Roshane, thank you. Number 2. Well, I hope that by the time we look at this video, I just want to use this video to make the connection between how it matters, how it connects, because there are some persons who haven't as yet responded. And just in case we have any persons in the room that might be wondering, not so sure, let's make a first connection with this quick video. Oh, let me make sure I'm sharing my sound as well, please. There we go. Awesome. I think you can see my screen now, yes? So quick question. Does this get any ideas going? Well, first of all, first idea I think might be, my gosh, that's a lot. How can I as a small business connect to something like that? Because, Apple has quite a lot of money, which depending on where you're operating or your stage, if you've just started up or so, you may not quite be able to identify as yet. But it's an important conversation, and it has some implications for the way that we do business on an everyday basis. So let me just continue. There were also quite a lot of terminologies that came out there, right? And our first task today is just to break down some of that. So some of this may be familiar, some of it may not. But whichever way you fall, let's just jump in. So sustainability, once we're talking sustainability, we're talking at looking at meeting the needs of today without compromising the ability of future generations to be able to meet their needs. Now, when we take that from a business perspective, this is like one of the broadest ambitions we could have as a business. And however, there's a benefit in that to us. It's sort of long-term thinking about the way in which we are doing business, and it sort of helps our long-term viability and resilience. A second terminology that probably everybody in the room is already familiar with is the Sustainable Development Goals, those 17 interconnected goals that we've been looking at for quite a number of years since we transitioned from the Millennium Development Goals, I believe it was. But if we look at the Sustainable Development Goals in a slightly different perspective, it becomes an interesting and useful framework for which we can start framing our strategy and our strategic planning, or at least one additional framework that we could take into consideration. And then these two are important. I think everybody may be familiar with the term corporate social responsibility. That's been around for quite a while. But we're also talking about corporate sustainability, which is more of a management model that would bring those sustainability principles into your business strategy. So we have the concept of sustainability. We have a framework, one framework being the Sustainable Development Goals, and then we have a practice or a management model that we can use to bring that thinking straight into our business strategy. And the benefit in that is sort of creating more of a long-term stakeholder value, but still linking it back to the way in which we create economic value as businesses. And then there's corporate social responsibility, which helps us to move from the strategic framework into the actual practices or the activities that we may carry out. And it's very much voluntary. So it's not mandatory in many places. However, it's something that's just been done for quite a while, and it helps us to enhance the brand and reputation of our business. And then we have environment social governance, which is now assessment framework or reporting framework. So we have the principles, we have the big pie in the sky of what we want to do where the sustainability principles are concerned. We break that down further to bring it into one framework, which is Sustainable Development Goals. Then we bring it into our strategy through corporate sustainability, and then we bring it into the what we're practicing through corporate social responsibility. But then we have to also measure and report and figure out, are we doing the right things? What exactly are our goals by doing all of this? And there are many persons who would be interested in that, especially depending on the jurisdiction we're in. Investors, depending on the scale of your business. And if you're at that stage, investors would be interested because they want to know, well, we know you look good financially, but we also want to know how you're actually running this business. And is it likely to bring a return for us in the long run? Or are you really a short-term star, but there are some things coming on the climate front that's really going to throw off everything that you're doing. And wider stakeholders may also be interested. ESG, the term has been around for a bit, and it refers to many things, some of which are captured on the screen there. So environment, we heard in the video just about carbon emissions. Very ambitious thing to do. There are companies that are already doing it. There are companies that are regulated and have to do it. It also looks at waste management. So if we bring it to our smaller businesses, how do we manage our waste disposal? How are we utilizing energy? Are there ways to become more energy efficient? Are there ways to become more water efficient in terms of the type of operations we're running? Is there a way to become more efficient in how we utilize water? And then social, also quite a number of things involved there. One of them being looking at your supply chain. So yes, you're running, you're procuring your various inputs from many different places, but do you know where those things are coming from? Do you know the practices of the firms? Now again, the size of our organization might make it a bit challenging to do that type of mapping. However, the way things are going, we're going to have to find innovative ways to ask more questions and be a bit more aware about, the practices that we are indirectly supporting, even though we may not be aware. And then governance, nothing new. Data privacy, cybersecurity, that has been big on the world agenda. And right here in Jamaica, a lot of organizations have been victim to cyber attacks and so forth, and how they manage that, how they manage the privacy of customers' data, how we manage the privacy of customer data, because of course now there is the Data Privacy Act that we have to pay close attention to as well. So many different things, many different factors in terms of how this would make sense for your business. So that's just looking at some of the key terminologies. But then let's look at this now within the MSME sector. How does this work? And yes, we've looked at Apple. Yes, we know what some of the larger organizations are doing. But and I guess it's another way of asking the question that I asked earlier. For us right here, if there are persons who may not have answered earlier, do you see a connection to the activities that you undergo as an MSME participant? Do you see a connection? Let me put that back up. Sorry, I can't see the chat while I'm doing this. I'm trying to do both. All right, great. Do you see a connection? Is it a yes? Is it a no? Is it a not sure? I'm particularly interested in knowing if there's anybody in here who may not be sure as yet. Are there any number 3 persons in the room? And that's quite fine if you're at number 3. Hopefully by the end of this, you will be at number 1, right? So I saw another one there. Thank you so much, Yannick. Thank you. And Deandra, thank you. So let's just take a quick look at the MSME sector in the Caribbean and what some of those linkages look like.
What are MSMEs and why are they important? Micro, small, and medium enterprises, or MSMEs for short, are the small companies that make up the majority of the economy. It is estimated that between 70 to 85% of all enterprises within the borrowing member countries of the Caribbean Development Bank are MSMEs. The MSME sector has been recognized as the engine of growth in CDB's BMCs, supporting sustained and inclusive economic development. In fact, they contribute between 60 to 70% of gross domestic product and account for approximately 50% of total employment, including those from marginalized groups, including youth, indigenous groups, and persons with disabilities. The MSME sector is also arguably the most important in combating poverty and inequalities within the region. They also employ a disproportionate number of women and play a key role in ensuring women's full and effective participation in business and trade. Almost 40% of small businesses are owned by women in the Caribbean, with up to 60% ownership in some countries. This means that MSMEs play a large role in closing the gender gap. MSMEs also make up the majority of the food producers in the Caribbean and ensure sustainable food production systems, thus helping to eliminate hunger and promote food security. They are also key drivers of innovation, leading in research and development of novel products and services. What are the challenges faced by MSMEs? Despite their significant contribution to economic diversification, the MSME sector faces several constraints, including access to affordable finance, weak enabling environment including issues such as custom delays, logistics challenges, and bureaucracy. There are also high levels of informality, which contribute to limited data on the sector itself. CDB's private sector division is committed to supporting MSMEs, making them more competitive and ensuring they remain open for business. We take a
So I'm just going to stop it right there. Could any of you resonate with that? Are you facing any of those hurdles that were mentioned in the video? Anybody? Because they're talking about us. So I'm just wondering, does this context seem relatable to you? Are you facing access to financing challenges as you try to establish and grow your business? Is there anybody facing these types of challenges? Just type a yes if you are. Now, they talk about how important MSMEs are across the Caribbean. And just looking at Jamaica alone, this was some data that was put out by JIS last year that says there are over more than 4,000 MSMEs in operation here in Jamaica, but check the figures. We account for $220 billion in taxes, or 13.4% of government revenue. And we are also contributing about 44% of GDP. Now, this is significant because when we think about the fact that there are some external pressures in our business environment, some of them being climate change and climate issues, some of them being social challenges that many territories are facing, and so forth, these sort of issues have fueled the need for businesses to operate a little bit differently. And then the reality is some of the very businesses that would have to be part of the transition are facing everyday challenges with just staying afloat. They just need to be making money. And so it's not always a priority to talk about sustainability. And so that is a particular tension when we talk about the whole sustainability agenda, how important it is, why it needs to happen, and then the reality of, can all the actors on the ground who are supposed to make it happen, are they in a state of readiness to make it happen? So that's part of the tension that I wanted to highlight. So then let's talk about it from the risk, costs, and revenue opportunities, because now this is where we bring it home to what does this mean for you? So we're getting closer to that. Now, I keep talking about the risks. And this is important because when we look, for instance, at the World Economic Forum, and I'm now putting on my hat as a previous head of research for Financial Services Group, and there's so many data points that we would have to look at to figure out what's happening in the business environment. And each of us here as business owners have to do the same, figure out what's likely to happen in the space, or what's happening in the space that is likely to impact on me. And the World Economic Forum, every year they put out these global risks and they rank them by severity. And some of the things that have been on the agenda for quite a while, for instance, misinformation and disinformation, number one issue facing private sector, of which many of you, if not all of you, would fall in as business owners. Misinformation and disinformation has been a big one, but also societal issues is one, and extreme weather events. Now, when we look further out 10 years, and I know that we may not always be thinking about 10 years, but the truth is, if we've started a business, we are thinking about the next 10 years as well, because in spite of today's struggle, we're thinking about how viable, how awesome we're going to look in 10 years' time. Well, in 10 years' time, most of the challenges that our businesses are going to face have to do with the weather, have to do with the earth, has to do with biodiversity issues. And that is across the board, whether you are civil society, government, or private sector. So the truth is, for you to be ready for that time, there are some different types of thinking that would have to happen now. Now, what does this mean for your business? Your operating costs are likely to change, right? One example, last year we know was a pretty active season in terms of the number of named storms that were experienced. And, we took a battering in the Caribbean. We saw Florida taking a battering as well. That impacts on the cost of insurance for businesses, for property owners, homeowners, and so forth. It has a real cost. And for business owners here, perhaps you're already facing those costs, depending on your size and the type of activity you're involved in. For some types of businesses, this could also mean that assets that you have on your books as assets today could really become stranded assets tomorrow. And this is particularly relevant in the oil industry, where so much has been spent for exploration. We know right here in the Caribbean, we're still exploring. Jamaica is still having this conversation. Guyana has struck oil for some time now, Suriname, and it goes on. And at the same time, while we're happy because now it can fuel development of these societies, part of the issue is that with the climate challenge that's happening as well, there's a very heated conversation that's coming, and perhaps how would that impact on these countries' abilities to leverage this resource? Your production costs, so I mentioned about energy efficiency, water, waste, these costs can go up for you, right? And then how you source your revenue, where exactly is your revenue coming? That could change a little bit because the demand for products and services could look a little differently if we're having more floods. And this is one that I wonder about all the time because, for instance, when living in Guyana, um, in my early years, leaving the house with a rain boot was a normal state of play. That was just life. You don't leave home without your rain boots because it's probably going to rain and it's probably going to flood somewhere, right? Now we drive about in the cars and we drive through the flood water like nothing. But if this is going to be a continued pressing issue, is that an opportunity for different products and services to come to the market? Perhaps. And could one of you right here be the one that sort of looks for that opportunity and exploits that opportunity? Perhaps. Workforce costs as well. In fact, I remember reading one study that linked the frequency of hurricanes to reduced productivity. And we can understand that because if people are stranded at home, they're not on the job working, and that means shorter days. And we experienced that as well last year, and the costs go on. But then we're also thinking about the lost opportunities, right? Now, if you're a supplier, I don't know if any of the businesses on right now, oops, sorry about that. I don't know if any of the businesses on right now, if you're operating as a supplier. If you are, just type yes. If you're operating already as a supplier to a larger business, just drop yes in the chat. Now, why is this important? Because in as much as this conversation about sustainability, it may take its time to translate down to the much smaller businesses, but it will translate. And some of the pathways in which it will translate could be, for instance, you have to go to the bank to access financing. And lo and behold, the bank starts asking you a new set of questions as a small business that now is about, oh, how you're running your actual operations, because now they're looking at things lending, not only from a credit risk, not only from the perspective of will you pay back the money, but also from the perspective of, are you a sustainable business? You know, what are the practices that you have in your business that we need to know about? That could translate into putting you into jeopardy your status as a supplier for some businesses, the lost opportunity for financing. Again, why do I say that? For many small businesses, we sometimes depend on, for instance, when the DBJ gets financing from some external entity and then on-lends that money to a bank, and then the bank can lend that money to the bank, and the bank can then on-lend it to you at hopefully preferential rates. But again, are there additional conditions that are going to come with that? And I know at one workshop that I did last year, a DBJ representative did mention about some things that they're looking at through the Green Climate Fund and some specific changes that the banks would have to make in terms of qualifying. And some of those changes had to do with sustainability issues. What about your customers? The more people become aware, the more the pressures around us, increase to do business differently. We could also have customers that are looking for alternative products. Now, there is data and there is research to show that in some territories, this is already happening. It may not be prevalent in ours, but in other territories, customers actually are demanding more alternative products, especially in jurisdictions where sustainability issues are also regulated. And how does it impact on your access to new markets? So for instance, if anybody here is in the export industry, you manufacture some product and you want to export, you want to widen the number of markets that you gain entry into. Are there additional things that you know would have to report on in order to do that? And we see how the corporates are already responding. They're looking at climate risk management. They're talking about net zero commitments. Sometimes that means becoming more efficient themselves. Sometimes that means participating in carbon markets and, supporting a forest to grow somewhere. It looks like different things. And materiality analysis, which is a good one that for us to even pay attention now, because it can inform how we do our strategic planning. And materiality analysis and stakeholder engagement goes together. And what does that simply mean? You're in business for some time, you're operating the way that you're operating, but now you're taking a moment to sort of check in with customers, check in with your board members, check in with your employees, and hear their thoughts about things that they hold as priorities and figure out, wait a minute, might that be some product or service opportunities I didn't pay attention to, or are there some impacts that my business might be having that I wasn't even aware of? So how do you adjust? These are the actions. I think they fall into three key buckets. Our strategic thinking skills have to change. There are initiatives that we should be thinking about. My apologies. And there are partnerships we should be thinking about collaboration. But let's start at number one. Great. So strategic mindset. Long-term thinking. In as much as we are pressed to make sure that money is flowing today into our business, we also should be making space to engage in some long-term thinking about how our business could evolve. Be aware, do the research, put aside some dedicated time to actually figure out what's happening, what's the conversation happening around my industry, and how does that conversation around my industry intersect with sustainability issues? And ask the question, if I'm a startup and I'm about to launch into something, is this model actually at risk and I didn't even realize? And is there an opportunity for me to now start to do a little pivot by thinking about some additional things? And am I in a growth niche? So yes, many of us would think about, what are the growth areas? Some of us start with what we're passionate about. Some of us look at where the growth areas are and we launch out there. But then let us also think about growth niches from the perspective of sustainability. Together, these things will sort of elevate for us what are some of the risks we have to be aware of, what are some of the opportunities we didn't even realize are there for us, and what are some of the product or service diversification opportunities that are right in front of us that we may not even have realized. And it may not necessarily mean doing it right now if you're just starting out, but it might be planning towards that for a future time, because it really could be additional revenue streams for you. If you are a larger business, it might be some, and you have the revenue, the additional revenue that you can put into additional research and so forth. Maybe there are opportunities that you could be looking at from a sustainability perspective. Great. And I just wanted to share this particular diagram because this sort of gives an example of what that thinking might look like. So for instance, where everybody is looking at risk and they're looking at their margins and how much money we're making and so forth. And then when we have the environmental issues, are there ways for us to become more eco-efficient? If you're an IT company, for instance, and you might be supplying computers, you might be bringing in and selling computers. Are you thinking about when those products reach their end of life cycle, how are we dealing with disposal? Is there an opportunity for a service connected to that, for instance? So it's looking at the between areas of sustainability that we didn't necessarily look at and figure out, well, what might be some product or service opportunities that are there, but I just never thought about or I just was never aware of. And so that's the type of thinking I'm referring to. And then there are smart policies. Are there policies literally that you can be thinking of? Now, if you're a startup, it might look a little bit differently. You start thinking about it. You start planning, these are some ways I can already start to adjust my approach, or this is something I might want to look at within another year or 2 years, or however the case may be. If you're a much more established business, are there opportunities for you to be starting to incorporate environmentally friendly practices within your current operations? or socially responsible practices. And some of them you may be doing already, like making sure you do fair pay, making sure, maybe your business is a more inclusive model. Maybe you have a bit more of a social enterprise model where the profits that you earn are actually being distributed in some way to solve a social need as well. Either way, putting some policies, written policies around these things are helpful, because that's the way it can go from being a great thought in your head or something that you've been doing sort of organically, to now packaging it in a way through a policy that helps you to be more intentional in your business practices around it. And that's something that can be leveraged in terms of your brand positioning and the way in which you communicate about your business in the market space. And perhaps that can lead you to competitive advantages. And those competitive advantages, of course, can lead to revenue. So we want to look at that. I just mentioned some of these examples of what that can look like in terms of policy, your written policies. Is there an opportunity to strengthen your governance framework? Do you have written policies that all of your employees are guided by? If we're a startup, we may not have gotten to the stage of written policy, but you need to be aware of what are the things that are there policies from government in the space that are there that I may not have been aware of. So I was not even in compliance, and so to create a pathway for which you can become compliant with it. And I think I skipped over this phrase, and I had it there, where I said sustainability almost can become like the new TCC. There are some businesses, if you're a supplier and you go to those businesses, they will ask you what before they do business with you, can you supply your TCC, please? And so some of the sustainability questions that are being asked, can almost become like that at some point. So this is just us starting to adjust ahead of time and not just react when something like that becomes more prevalent. And then there are the smart business initiatives we can be thinking about. If you have the revenue and you can afford it, is it feasible for you to look at energy efficiency? Because that can, that may be a good thing for your organization and reduce some of your expenditure. Now, we think a lot about energy, but water use efficiency is also important. And I'm going to share two examples from right here in Jamaica that I think would be good for us to look, for businesses to think about. And then digitization of your operations. Let's reduce the paper and the paper wastage. And startups, this goes from startup straight up. Their app, their programs, their software, there are things we could be bringing into our business that helps to make us, much more efficient at the end of the day. And the truth is that the digitization conversation is often connected to the sustainability conversation as well. The added benefit as a business is that it helps you to reduce your costs, which is an important part of your overall profitability at the end of the year, and it can help to improve your overall efficiency as a business. And I mentioned wanting to look at examples. So, has anybody heard of the organization Instant Safe Conservation? Just drop a yes if you have, if you're familiar with them or you've heard about them before. If you haven't, you can always check them out. But I actually got these two examples from them. So I wanted to break down practically what this water use efficiency thing is. A nice terminology, but what does it really mean for you? Okay, so Instant Save really provides water efficient fixtures that can be utilized. Thanks, Deandra. They provide a lot of water efficient fixtures. They have a store on Haining Road. You can check it out. Two cases in particular. Anybody knows the restaurant The Deck right there in New Kingston? They actually did some work for them some years ago. The Deck spent $100,000 to replace a couple of faucets and some toilets. And the result of just that $100,000 investment, they were able to reduce their water bill by 50%. Overall reduce their water bill by 30%, but the reduction in water use was by 50% in just the restroom alone. And that $100,000 that they spent, they got that back within 6 months in terms of what they were able to save. And then For instance, they've also would have worked with mothers downtown. Mothers, the branch, one of the branches downtown would have spent about $250,000, and they would have looked at replacing about 6 toilets and 9 faucets, and that alone within 4 months gave them a monthly saving of about $64,000. Now, over a much longer period, that looked like a $1.5 million saving on their water bill. But more than that, within 4 months, they were able to recoup that investment, right? So when we talk about water use efficiency, it's not only from a sustainability perspective in terms of using less water and being mindful about how that impacts other community, but it's also about a real opportunity to lower our costs and become more efficient within the organization. And you should know that water is a very important thing because right now water is being used as part of an escalating conflict on the other side of the world. So water is an important thing. And then our give back. We've always talked about corporate social responsibility, but there's an additional lens I want us to think about when we're looking at that as business owners, and that is we've a lot of times we think about what's nice to do. Sometimes it's driven by the passions of the owner and so on. But the whole discussion around sustainability and ESG actually gives us an additional perspective to take it from, which is if I think about everything happening out in the space around climate, around social pressures, around all of that, and I'm figuring out what impact does that have on my company bottom line. And at the same time, I'm thinking about what is my company's impact, the way that I do business, what is the impact on the overall society or environment? And if I find some really great intersection points in there, then we're talking about issues that are really material to the way that we do business. And when we say material, we just mean that, look, we could focus on a million things, but what are the most important things to focus on? And when we identify those material issues, we can actually start building that into the way that we create our initiatives to give back. Because in that way, there is a benefit for the society or the environment, but also it improves our resilience as a business. It improves our long-term viability, and there are opportunities for brand enhancement as well. And so there's a win-win situation. And so that's part of the reason why I didn't just say sustainable give back initiatives, but smart, because it makes sense as businesses as well. And that goes for whether you're just starting out and you have a great idea and you have to think about execution, or if you're already there. And then some other practices to be aware of. And again, depending on the size of business, looking at your supply chain, I mentioned the product end of life cycle. Disposal, is that an opportunity for an IT company, for instance? Anybody operating in the beauty industry, do you need to be scrutinizing where your products are coming from and how they're sourced and so forth? And can you leverage that information for how you market your product, your end product, or your end service to enhance your brand? Last one, I think it is partnerships, critical, especially as small businesses. There are some things that we simply cannot do alone. So this is where you find the right networks to be part of so that you can be aware of what's going on. You can access that market research a lot easier. Are there organizations that are offering business development support and are also including the sustainable practice element of it, like you're doing right here now with UCC BDCI? And are there partnership opportunities you could be taking advantage of? Is there training that you can be accessing? Why is it important? Because you want to become a smarter business faster. Because at the end of the day, we're thinking about how can leveraging becoming a smarter business really also give me access to financial pools that I would not necessarily have known of before, or I may not have even gone of because I wasn't aware that that was an opportunity. So my final thing is, look, just start. You don't have to do everything right away. but you can simply start with a very simple plan of action. The more you learn, you say, you know what, this actually makes sense for our business. We are not going to be able to do it in the next 6 months, but this is something we're going to put on our agenda. Within the next 2 years or so, we want to have been able to do this. Get access to the training, and this is one example that you're doing right now. Seek out where are the collaborations that I could be a part of, that could help me get there faster. At the end, I would love to know that the very businesses that are starting today as small businesses actually are the ones that are going to stand out tomorrow, as starting from the very get go with doing very innovative things in your business model. I hope this has made sense to you. I hope it was helpful. Um, um, Oops, 1 second. Let me just get something to share with you in the chat. Yeah, I hope that that was helpful. I'm very much looking forward to hearing if there are any questions you may have or comments that you love to make. Please just drop it in the chat. It's not a problem. I'm looking forward to having a quick conversation with you. Was this helpful? Let me just put that screen back up for you. Was this helpful? Please just open up your mic and let me know. I would love to hear at least one voice. Let me see if I can get to some persons. Francine, Jessica, anybody, I hope you found this helpful. I have shared my thank you, Shana. Oh, Shana, you have a question. Please go ahead. Shana, did you have a question? You can go ahead.
Uh,
I see your hand.
Shannon Lewis, I give you permission to talk, so you can just ask a
Uh,
question.
oh, we're not hearing you, Shana. Would you like to maybe try typing it in the chat?
Was
Oh, I hear you. Yes, go ahead.
I wasn't really trying to ask a question. I was just saying these information are helpful.
Okay,
It
great.
wasn't really a question. I was just
Okay.
saying the information is really helpful. I'm not yet off the mark, but getting this information because I would be saying maybe it is for businesses that are already in operation, but I notice you always mention the startup. So I realize I can benefit from some of these activities that other businesses that are already operating can benefit from as well.
Absolutely. And I remember there was one incubator program last year, that part of their qualifier for joining that incubator was that you actually had to have a climate smart model. So they were looking to incubate businesses that were solving sustainability type issues, and that's a fantastic thing. So it shows you that we are beyond awareness in our local space. There are active programs happening. Anybody else? Andreen, I would love to hear from you, or Corlina, or Jessica. Just go ahead, put up your hand, or just open up your mic and speak. I'd love to hear some feedback from you, or drop it in a chat, or drop a comment in the chat. So, okay, while I wait on that, I have shared within the chat contact information for me. You can find Pinnacle Impact up on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with you. And I also dropped a link for you if you would like to connect with me via my newsletter, where you can get information like this on an ongoing basis. And you have my website and my phone number. Just start, and I'm looking forward to seeing great things that you all do in your businesses in time to come. I see someone, Jessica. Thank you. Great, great, helpful. Oh, yes, totally against burning as a method disposal. And that is something that's really important. And I think that, maybe IT services providers or whomever, I think it's an opportunity. And because you're talking about managing records, and you're so right. And this is something that digitization can help with as well. Maybe if we were utilizing those types of practices, we wouldn't have to be thinking about burning stuff, because maybe we have transformed that data into soft form. So, yeah, thank you, Jessica. I appreciate your feedback. So that's it. I really appreciate all of you being here today. Please connect with me on social media or wherever, and continue to ask questions. I do respond to my DMs and that kind of thing, so please don't hesitate. And I share the link there that you can always follow the link, leave your information, and subscribe to the newsletter if you'd like. Thank you so much, everybody. You're welcome, Francine.
All right, thank you very much, Anika, for this wonderful presentation. Very informative. The video, it will be edited and uploaded to our YouTube channel, and we will also be sending you something in the mail as gratitude for being a presenter for us today. So
Sure,
thank you
you're
very much,
welcome.
and
You're
we
so welcome.
do look forward to working with you again in the future.
Certainly. Oh, thanks for asking that question. I'm sharing it now. I just realized I sent it to the host. My apologies. You can connect with me directly there on LinkedIn, either me directly or Pinnacle, or follow the link and leave your information. I look forward to talking with you all some more. Take good care.